The Atlanta Braves need a new manager for 2026. Here's some of the names we're hearing and some of the guys that make sense. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Thursday, October 2nd, your source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball, and you can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We also have a Facebook page. You can find all my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. The Braves had a little bit of news last night about some guys that were passed through waivers, and they outrighted them to Gwinnett, right? Alexis Diaz, Dane Dunning, Sandy Leon, Luke Williams, Jared Kelenic. Those 5 guys came off the 40-man roster. You go from 51 to 46. We named all those guys yesterday in the show when we went through the entire 51-man men on the roster and figured out who would be either outrighted or DFA'd or non-tendered or whatever. We named all 5 of those as guys who would be in that bucket. So go us. No other real news happened on Wednesday, right? Obviously, Brian Snitker's not coming back. We talked about it a little bit on yesterday's show. I re-recorded that really quickly after the news broke. I wanted to talk today about who might replace Snit, okay? And obviously, one thing to keep in mind, if anybody tells you they know what's happening, they probably don't, okay? It's an incredibly quiet front office. I've talked to some people, in and around the organization, and none of them are authorized to speak publicly. None of them are the decision makers on this. It's a very small circle Atlanta's working with. But people in the organization who have a feeling, have heard things whispered, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's important to understand that the front runner in the clubhouse as of now is probably going to be Walt Weiss. Not everybody's going to like that. Let's talk about it. So, current bench coach, he was the former manager of the Colorado Rockies from 2013 to 2016. So, managerial experience, great. The downside there is they weren't that good. He had a .437 winning percentage, never finished better than third place. Bud Black took over for him in 2017 and immediately had them in the postseason. They actually, in 2018, they missed the division title by like 1 game. They were 1 game back after game 162. But some of the people that I talked to, again, not authorized to speak publicly, but they said the feeling, the impression that they get, their belief after just being at work, is that Walt Weiss could very well be the guy. And if that were to happen, it would be a continuity play. So what they would be doing is they would be retaining Rick Kranitz as pitching coach, Tim Hires as hitting coach, Freddie Gonzalez probably sticks around, Eddie Perez probably sticks around, and they would push to add Ron Washington as the bench coach. And the idea here is he knows the players. He knows the front office. He has managerial experience. It makes sense. Like, if you think about it from an objective perspective, it makes sense. The issue here, and we don't know to what extent this is or is not true or how bad it was, but if you are inclined to think that one of the issues with the 2025 Atlanta Braves, and some in 2024 as well, was not directly the players themselves, but the coaching they were receiving, the accountability placed or not placed on them, that kind of stuff. If there wasn't a firm enough hand from the managerial role and all of that, then continuity is a terrible idea, right? Because that means, hey, for the most part, this didn't work in the first half of the season, and we're going to keep just about the entire same personnel around. that didn't work in the first half of the season. Unless you're just a really big believer that Ron Washington being on the bench can single-handedly fix all of that, which maybe he can, I don't know. But that's the concern with Walt Weiss, right? That is the problem if you stick with Walt Weiss and you don't consider bringing in an outside manager, right? You're hiring from within, and then maybe you fill one or two roles from somebody from outside. And again, if you bring in Ron Washington, he's from outside, but he's a former Brave. I do think this also prompts the question of how much does the new hire need Atlanta ties, really? It's clear that they value familiarity. And the clubhouse culture is specifically something that AA has called out when he talks about trying to get free agents, right? They brought Ha-Sung Kim in. That cost him $2 million. And the idea was he had a chance to get immersed in the clubhouse culture and understand the way Braves do things and the levels of professionalism and respect and all of that are present in the Braves clubhouse. And Brian Snitker built a lot of that. And keeping Walt Weiss keeps a lot of that. Do you consider hoping that that is more created and maintained by the players and bringing somebody from outside of the organization but has ties to Atlanta? Two names that have come up in this situation. I've got more than just two, but two of the main names that have come up in this situation, David Ross and Mark DeRosa. Okay. I've talked about David Ross before. I wrote a whole newsletter on him back in, I think, August, talking about how he checks off a lot of boxes, right? He's a former Brave. He has managerial experience. And if you look at all of the stakeholders involved in this decision, and by that I mean people that have a say and an interest in this, right? You look at the players. David Ross he played recently enough to understand the grind of the modern game, right? He gets it. He did it. He's also played recently, he can relate to the players. He's younger. He's closer to their age. He can relate with what they're going through because he's gone through that. For the front office, he's also played recently enough where he's been immersed in analytics and he understands the value of analytics. So that's a scenario where they probably feel a little bit better about his ability to take what they are providing and use it in the best way possible. Now, I will say, if David Ross is hired based on his Chicago experience, and he did do an interview with The Athletic where he said he would do things differently, but based on his Chicago experience, you definitely need to give him somebody to help manage the bullpen, because he did not do that well in Colorado. I'm sorry, in Chicago. But David Ross is an option. People are asking for Mark DeRosa. I really don't think Mark DeRosa is a great option for a couple reasons. Yes, he spent time here, right? He was a draft pick by the Braves, 7th round in 1996. Spent 7 seasons here before he left in free agency. But he has virtually no managerial or coaching experience to speak of. His only real experience is managing Team USA in the World Baseball Classic. And that was, in essence, they played like 6 games. And it was an all-star team. Like, at a certain point, you don't have to motivate Mike Trout. If Mike Trout, he's going to be Mike Trout. The Mike Trout of, a couple years ago. And also, he's talked about the Braves a little bit on social media and on MLB Network in a way that could potentially cause issues in the clubhouse. I see him struggling in some of those respects with the current players in the room, simply because of his previous statements and things like that. If I'm picking one of those two, I'm definitely picking David Ross over Mark DeRosa. There are other names that I've heard that would make sense as well, who are both former Braves and have actually coached in Major League Baseball. George Lombard spent 3 seasons, an outfielder, spent 3 years with the Braves, 98 through 2000. He entered coaching in 2010. He was the first base coach for the Dodgers for 6 years. He was there during their World Series title season in 2020. He's currently the bench coach for the Detroit Tigers. Obviously, you'd have to wait for them to be eliminated before you can talk to them. That could happen as soon as today. They have a game 3 today. That could happen as soon as today. He could be free this evening. Who knows? Ryan Flaherty, infielder, he played for Snit in 2018. He's now a bench coach for the Cubs. Also in the playoffs, also could be eliminated tomorrow. He could be free tomorrow. You've got options if you're going for that. I do think it's possible that the Braves, though, kind of pivot and go outside of the family completely. We'll talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season's here. They have all their NFL specials out. Baseball fans like us can take advantage of that. New customers can bet just $5 and you get $300 in bonus bets if you win. So you pick a bet, you put down $5, and if it hits, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You typically can't withdraw the $300 in bonus bets, but you can withdraw your winnings when you win with those. So while you're watching these game 3s today, you can do a parlay, you can do a player prop, you can follow the live line during a game. I was following the live Dodgers-Reds line last night, and the Dodgers were consistently still the favorite, but I just watched it ticking down, first inning, second inning, third inning, where you were getting a little better return, and at a certain point it clicks over where the Reds are then the favorite, because you just get far enough in the game where a 2-0 lead is more likely to stand up. But whether you're a casual fan or you want to dive super deep into all of this, FanDuel makes the experience so much better, and they have everything for you. It's just simple and it's easy. So visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsey Crosby, let's talk about some of the managerial options outside of Atlanta for the Braves. And this is really tough, right? Because this could be almost anybody. Let's put some quick ground rules on this. One, I'm not going to talk about anybody who is currently managing a major league team, whether they're playing or not right now. If they have a job, let's not talk about them. Aaron Boone could get fired if the Yankees lose to the Red Sox tomorrow. If he gets fired, I'll talk about it. Let's not talk about him now because he has a job. I also want to take out Skip Schumacher here, okay? I'm really intrigued by the idea of Skip Schumacher. I think he did some great things in Miami with a not great roster. I mentioned the other day when I talked about Atlanta being so bad in one-run games, how Miami was 33-14 in one-run games. I genuinely think some of that was either his strategic decisions or his ability to rally the guys, get them all of that kind of stuff, right? I think the manager can influence things like that. Bullpen decisions, when to use guys, all of that. But he's working as a senior advisor to Texas Rangers GM Chris Young. And the idea here is they had a manager in waiting, right? They had a guy, Joe Espada, who was working with the team that was understood to be the next manager. I think he was the bench coach. And then he left to go take a major league job. And they turned around and hired Skip Schumacher on an off-field role since he had money left on his Miami contract. And so if he took the on-field job, he would have to take, it would mess up his pay. Plus the fact that Bruce Bochy was there as the manager. He'd have to take a demotion down. But they went ahead and hired his Miami bench coach, Luis Ureta, to Bruce Bochy's staff. They said to Bruce Bochy, this is your new bench coach to replace the one that's gone. And it was the guy that Skip had. People I've talked to, everybody, it feels pretty sure that Skip Schumacher is going to get the Texas job. So let's take him out of this as well. I wouldn't mind it. Let's take him out of this. I've talked about Gabe Kapler in the past. I've written about him in the past. I don't have a lot about him right here. I just don't. We've discussed that before. He's really big on analytics. He has a bad reputation as far as being able to relate to players in the clubhouse. It just doesn't feel like it's a great fit from the clubhouse stuff and all of that for Atlanta. Bruce Bochy, by the way. Bochy got let go by Texas. I don't think Bochy's going to come over. One, he's already 70. He turned 71 early next year. If you bring him on, you're probably looking for a new manager in a couple years anyway. But also, he has a good relationship with San Francisco, with Buster Posey. They have an opening. So it's incredibly likely that he would lean more towards that job than this job. But that job is open because they let go of Bob Melvin. And I think that might be something worth discussing if you're the Braves. 22-year coaching veteran, 3 Manager of the Year awards. The issue, though, here's the issue. On paper, he's a guy you want to talk to, right? You want to talk to Bob Melvin if he's free. And I talked to him one time at the winter meeting. Super nice guy. But the recent Giants teams, the things you've always kind of said about the Giants teams is they weren't good with the running game. They didn't have a good defense. And they weren't really good with the fundamentals. They hit well, but they didn't do some of the other stuff. And Atlanta's not a great base running team. I called them the worst base running team in the league last month. But they're really good defensively. And they're really big on the fundamentals. Except when it comes to bunting. Half these guys can't bunt. So it doesn't feel like Bob Melvin would be a great fit either. Rocco Baldelli, however, the Minnesota Twins, I'm really intrigued by that concept. He was manager of the year in 2019 with the Twins, had a 101-win season. That was the year where they set the MLB record for homers in a single season by a team. Atlanta tied that record in 2023. But he won 3 division titles in 7 years. He also really kind of struggled in the postseason. They had 3 appearances in the postseason during his 7 years. They won a grand total of 1 game. They were swept in the wild card round once. They were swept in the divisional round once. And the other divisional round was a 3-1 series loss. So a little bit concerned about the floor is high, but where's the ceiling with Rocco Baldelli? I do think he's a better fit for a team of veterans like Atlanta has than a team that was transitioning to young guys like Minnesota. I do also think he was a scapegoat in Minnesota. He wasn't the reason they were so bad this year, but neither here nor there. I do need to mention John Gibbons to you as well. And I may have discussed this. I may have mentioned it yesterday, or I may have mentioned it in the David Ross show back in August. But Alex Anthopoulos has hired John Gibbons twice. So he had managed Toronto from 04 to 08, and he was let go so they could bring Cito Gaston back for his second stint with the club. November 2012, Alex Anthopoulos is in charge. He brings John Gibbons back. Gibbons manages for 6 more seasons. Overall record is literally 4 games over 500. He's 793 and 789. 4 games over 500. When Anthopoulos comes to Atlanta, he hired John Gibbons again. He brings him in 2020 when AA was redoing the scouting department. He gives him a big role in the scouting department in 2020. Gibbons works here for 3 years, then goes to the Mets as the bench coach. He's still with the Mets. He's still the bench coach under Carlos Mendoza. But that was something where AA's hired him twice. So if you hear that they're bringing in John Gibbons or they're requesting permission to interview John Gibbons, don't be shocked. Simply because AA's hired him twice. They're clearly friends. He clearly likes him and trusts him and all of that. I don't think John Gibbons is going to be the manager. Just making sure you've heard the name. Because obviously that could come up. In just a minute though, what if we got weird? Let's talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsey Crosby. Let's talk about if Atlanta really wanted to cast the widest possible net, right? No one's off limits. Here's some of the names that would kind of, I guess, be surprising, but be somebody that you could see if they went absolutely crazy here. The first one is, what if they called some college coaches? We've seen back and forth between college and the pros. Not a ton, but we've seen it. David O'Brien of The Athletic, in his article about Snit stepping down, he updated it with quotes and all of that, and he said, and some names of potential replacements. And one of the names he threw out there, and I don't think it's reporting, I think it's just kind of for the vibes, and this would be fun to throw out there, Tony Vitello of the University of Tennessee. He's been there 8 years. He's taken them to the College World Series 3 times. He won a national championship. He's known as a fiery personality. I honestly don't think it would be a great fit. I've seen Tony Vitello firsthand through my time covering college baseball. He's that kind of guy that you like him if he's your manager. But if he's not, he drives you crazy. I know there are college coaches that can't stand him. They call the things that he does antics. He is abrasive. He is loud. He gets in your face. He has an attitude. And all of that rubs off on the team. But I would argue it rubs off the wrong way on the team. And if you think about the Braves clubhouse, like these guys, they don't have a ton of the super fiery personalities, for better or for worse, right? But they pride themselves on doing things the right way and holding themselves to a certain standard. And Vitello doesn't really mesh well with that. He feels like a better fit for a young team that needs to kind of have their youthful energy focused on a thing, right? They rally behind their manager, who is the energetic guy out there in front of everything. Honestly, he kind of would make sense in Philly too. Because if you think about the way the Phillies do things, and a lot of this comes back to like Harper, but like they manufacture grievance, like they find things to get mad about. And Vitello also finds things to get mad about. I remember a game against Auburn where the Auburn player hit a homer and did a mild bat flip. Not anything significant. He didn't chuck it way up in the air, but he kind of swung. He kind of just popped it off his backswing and jogged to first. But when the bat hit, it bounced like once or twice because it hit like on the end, and it ended up near their dugout. And so Tony Vitello goes and gets the bat, and Auburn's guy comes in to score. There's a couple players there at home plate celebrating, and he throws the bat into the crowd of players. Like, if you're a fan of Tennessee, if you're a Tennessee fan, and you hear him talk about they threw the bat into our dugout, so I threw it back, you're like, yeah, that's our coach. Anybody else watching that, you're like, dude, what are you doing? Grow up. Tony Vitello is not a good option here. If I was going for a college coach, though, and I'm looking at an SEC coach somewhere in Braves country, right? I'm calling either LSU or Georgia. Okay? I am calling for Jay Johnson at LSU or Wes Johnson at UGA. So Jay Johnson, 2-time National Coach of the Year. He's won 2 championships in 4 years in Baton Rouge. Those Tigers teams have been known for clutch hitting, good defense, and just phenomenal pitching. Okay? Now, some of the credit for that pitching, you have to transfer it to Georgia because Wes Johnson, and there's no relation here, Wes Johnson was the former pitching coach at LSU for Jay Johnson before he went to Georgia to be the head coach. Before LSU, he was the pitching coach, the major league pitching coach for the Minnesota Twins. And before that, he was in college. So he's coached in both college and the pros. He's never been the manager in the pros, but he has coached in the professional ranks. And he's done a good job at developing pitchers. And so bringing in a pitching guy in an organization that has a lot of long-term position player deals, but is still breaking in rookie pitchers seemingly every single year, makes a lot of sense. And when he's gotten a really good pitcher, he hasn't screwed him up. He had Paul Skeens. He didn't screw up Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens is one of the best pitchers in baseball. Wes Johnson didn't break Paul Skeens at LSU that one year, okay? You could also look at, like, former players, okay? And Chipper Jones has already said no. So everybody needs to stop asking, hire Chipper Jones. He has said he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't have the willingness or the ability to commit the time that it would take while his boys are all, like, middle high school age. This is the time they're home. They want to hang out with their dad. They're playing sports. He wants to be part of that. So he's already said no. In the words of Nick Saban, I'm not going to do it, so quit asking. Quit asking about Chipper Jones. People have asked, though, about Travis d'Arnaud. Catchers make good managers. 100%. I get it. He was here for quite a while. He won a World Series with us. The issue you have here is twofold. One, he's still an active player. He played like a week ago. He's an active player. He has one more year on his deal with the Angels. So he'd have to file retirement paperwork and skip out on that to be the manager. Two, he has zero coaching or management experience. And it feels like that's not a place you want to put a novice manager, is a team that expects to contend next year. Now, the counterpoint to that is Stephen Vogt did it with the Guardians. He was off like a year or two, and then he went right into managing and has 2 postseason appearances, in 2 seasons. That's a counterpoint. I don't know if you can catch lightning in a bottle twice. I don't know if that is repeatable with Travis d'Arnaud. But if you want a former Atlanta Braves catcher to be manager, even though he doesn't have any MLB experience as a major league manager, Eddie Perez is right there. He's literally right there. He's a coach for the Braves already. He's bilingual, which is an underrated trait nowadays. A lot of the new wave of baseball, whether it's players, whether it's coaches, reporters, I've seen a lot of them doing this too, are trying to make sure that they're fluent in both English and Spanish because of the ever-increasing percentages of baseball players from Latin America. Eddie Perez is bilingual. He's coached in the majors. And he does have managerial experience. It's just not in the majors. The Venezuelan League, 3 different off seasons, he's gone down there and managed one of their teams just to help prepare for one day being a major league manager. So there's a lot of different paths Atlanta can take. There's going to be people interviewed in this that I've not mentioned in this show. But one, if there's an interview that comes up that we learn about that's not somebody in this show, I'll break it down, right? We'll go and we'll do the whole thing and we'll talk about who they are and their experience, the good, the bad, and all of that. Who do you want to know about? Who do you want to hear? One, who do you want to be the manager? I'm curious about that. But then 2, what candidates have I not mentioned that you want to learn about? Let me know. I'm on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can send me a tweet, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment down below in the comments. If you're here live on the premiere, 1, glad you're here. We usually have fun in these premieres, but 2, you can drop it in this premiere. I'm usually in here every day when the show drops at noon Eastern. If you're listening on audio, social media, or contact@bravestoday.com. About once or twice a week, I get an email from a listener who's listening on audio and wanted to just say hi, share a thought with me. I had one that wanted to send me something. I've gotten some cool things in the mail from you guys, so thank you for that. But in the meantime, do me a favor, if you are listening on audio, leave a 5-star review for the show, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Kind words are always fun too, if you want to leave a written review. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop the next episode. And as always, all of the written stuff, even things we haven't talked about on here, bravestoday.com, free or paid memberships go a long way towards helping this be the best source of independent Braves coverage with no corporate overlords in all of baseball. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.